2014, Ubisoft premiered the first footage of what was to become Rainbow Six Siege. At a quick glance, I completely passed the game off, had no interest in the title whatsoever. This was mainly due to the quality of certain Ubisoft franchises up to this point, including Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, Ghost Recon and Watch Dogs, becoming stale up to this point and did not make the prospect of a potentially lacklustre shooter all that appealing. The following year, Siege was released. Critics were praising the game for its level design, the melodic yet tense tactical round-based matches, and the destructibility of the world's environment that allowed players to get an upper hand on their opponents. The appeal of the game stemmed from its snappy shooting mechanics, challenging recoil, the no respawn system, and different operators, each of which were equipped with their own unique gadgets that could turn the tides of a round with the right coordination of a team. In a world where Call of Duty was at a slump in its production value, Siege opened up as an approachable shooter with a steep learning curve akin to titles such as CSGO. This steep learning curve provided players with a sense of accomplishment when performing well and the wanton passion to constantly improve their own gameplay to ascend up Siege's ranked system. There are still, to this day, only a handful of successful titles that provide such addictive and challenging sandbox gameplay as Rainbow Six that can keep its players wanting more. However, it wasn't too long before the cracks began to show. Reports of bad netcode resulting in poor hit detection, glitches that were driving what could be the game's initial sprint to a quick halt. In a game where headshots kill you instantly, this was a major issue for both players and developers. Alongside this, players weren't happy with the amount of content available at launch. Crucial operators and weapon attachments hidden behind in-game currency walls that could take hours upon hours of grinding to earn, leaving the players with little sense of progression. Then to top it all off, the game was becoming riddled with hackers that were ruining the gaming experience for all those at their whim. Something fairly common in competitive games, with people manipulating wall hacking, flying around the map in aimbots. It was making the game impossible to play when your rank was at stake. Many of these problems were the reason I refused to touch the game for so long. Ubisoft were determined to make Siege a success, with the promise of a 10-year lifespan, and launched the game with a live service model that would be broken down into quarterly seasons. This was to allow for the addition of new operators, maps, and weapons each season alongside crucial updates. Players were offered a season pass that would allow for pass holders to play new operators a week before the remainder of the player population. However, if non-season pass players wanted to obtain the new operators, they could either pay out of pocket for the operators they wanted, or pay nothing at all and use the game's inbuilt currency system, Renown. All maps added to the game were free for all to play. This was a means to keep the game fresh and evolving whilst avoiding splitting up the player base. Ubisoft, shortly after release, were quick to establish that all paid-for content within the game would be cosmetic only and would not affect the player's ability to win games easier. This led to the introduction of some weird and wonderful cosmetic items and the introduction of the ever-popular elite skins for operators. These added new animations and operator cards, and the announcements of which were waited on with almost as much excitement as the next season's operators. Despite not necessarily being the first game to do this was all something that players seemed to be very positive about, and a model that such titles as Overwatch, Fortnite, Battlefield, and even Call of Duty have somewhat emulated in their services. In the weeks leading up to Season 2 of Year 2 of the game's life cycle, Ubisoft announced that the upcoming season's content was to be postponed in favour of Operation Health. This operation provided no new content but sought to fix the errors within the game's core that was currently running riot. As all seasons added some form of bug fixes, the primary purpose of this season was to completely overhaul the game's system and provide a blanket fix to reported bugs and greatly improve the technologies used within their servers and matchmaking. The developers' intentions of Operation Health was to provide the player base with a better experience whilst prolonging the game's life. And for all intents and purposes, it worked so well that the players to this day would welcome Operation Health 2.0 to further prolong the game's lifespan into the next generation. Nevertheless, it wasn't until March of 2018, 3 years post-launch during a free weekend event of Year 3, Season 1, that I finally dived into Siege because my housemates at the time convinced me to do so. Reluctantly, I downloaded the game, booted it up, and joined them for a match of secure area. From that point, I was hooked. Like most, at the start I spent the majority of my matches watching cameras and teammates' POVs following an instant death from a power-hungry Ash Jaeger main, juiced up on pre-workout, G-Fuel and Adderall screaming, "Mum, get the camera." But it wasn't before too long that I started to get to grips with the game, and found myself learning maps, developing better gun skill, and constantly wanting to improve. There hasn't been a game before or since that makes me want to carry on after being battered 5 matches on the trot as Siege does. The desire to persevere towards the next rank is akin to the cravings of a chronic chain smoker needing their next packet of cigarettes. I would know. I quickly found myself gravitating to certain operators such as Thermite, Bandit, Zofia and Mirror, and learning strats to further master my skills with these operators. And whilst I care little for the overall lore of the game, I can understand fully why that would appeal to certain individuals and further enhance their experience for them. To me, appeal comes from things such as no longer being brutally murdered from a spawn peak across the map, but instead being able to effectively predict and counter said spawn peak more often than not. With patience and practice, I was able to master a mechanic that was not intended for the game by the developers, but since has become a crucial play by both ranked players and pro players. I'm talking about the illustrious bandit trick. Being able to perform such a maneuver can completely turn the tides of a round. Not only preventing a breach, but subsequently destroying Thermite or Hibana's breaching utility can provide a level of satisfaction and adrenaline as any 360 no-scope performed by FaZe Clan. Working and synergising with my teammates and meeting new players to expand our roster provides camaraderie, unity and power plays that can be masterfully executed for devastating results to our opponents. The combination of rush and panic of a successfully planted diffuser in the bomb's objective created an overriding sense of tension that can be compared to the feeling of knowing that a character is within dangerous grasp in a horror flick. And whilst the game occasionally comes into hiccups with the inevitable hacker, minor glitches, error, and the DDoSing troubles of Year 4, the game continues to be constantly updated with new patches, improvements to map design, lighting, operator balancing, and netcode issues. And whilst I still have Vietnam-style flashbacks of toxic attack rushes consisting of the combination of Lion, Finker, Dokebi, Blitz, and Jackal, the subsequent balancing of all the operators in the game has led to the overpowered and demobilising strats that have played the game to be less viable. No operator is immune from balancing tweaks, and therefore your main may get tweaked in a way that could make them more powerful or downright nerf them entirely. This, however, causes the players to adapt to these changes and find new strengths and weaknesses in all the operators and keep things fresh. And speaking of fresh, as we sit in Year 5, Season 1 of the game's life, Ubisoft continues to produce new and exciting content. Nevertheless, a set of new operators can come out and be a swing and a miss and prove to be underwhelming, but as of lately, new operators have been served to us and shaken up the meta, and been game-changing, such as Mozzie with his drone capturing, Nomad and Gridlock with their roam denial, and Goyo with his explosive cover. Operation Void Edge, this current season, sees the introduction of both Yana and Oryx, who show great potential to be effective additions to Team Rainbow. Yana, who can produce a hologram clone of herself and safely face-checks the site, changes the game and adds a layer of safety to a coordinated Ash rush. Oryx being able to climb hatches, run through walls, and create rotations, and also being a hard counter to shield operators, has the potential capacity to excel as possibly the next best roamer on defense, a title typically held by Jaeger, Ela, and Vigil. Despite a lot of new operators being a bit more science fiction than their more real-world, grounded veteran counterparts, they have been able to provide a level of versatility and tactical play seldom seen in other first-person shooters. So in all, is Rainbow Six Siege still worth playing in 2020? Well, with the year roadmap promising the addition of a further 4 new operators, 3 more map reworks, an overhaul to the Lord Tachanka himself, alongside the knowledge of further patches, fixes, and the game's transition to the next generation of consoles, my suggestion would be, if you're not already playing Rainbow Six Siege, then now is a great time to join or even return. With a thriving concurrent player base of around 200,000 players, and an esports league that could challenge the likes of Counter-Strike, Call of Duty and Fortnite, it is likely that Siege will continue to make strides in the FPS genre and stick around for a good while longer. So with that said, I've been Elon Tusk, thanks for watching and see you next time.